My family sold my $3,600 PC so my sister could buy designer clothes. But when I sued them and got my money back, they went into debt, and I built a life they never saw coming. I'm 22 years old. I work as a freelance graphic designer, and I stream occasionally, and I need to tell this story because literally 3 months ago, my parents sold my $3,600 PC without my permission so my younger sister could buy designer clothes. And that was basically the straw that broke the camel's back in a lifetime of being treated like I didn't matter. I guess I should start from the beginning so you understand why this wasn't just about a computer, you know? It was about years and years of being invisible in my own family, while my sister Natalie got absolutely everything she wanted. I grew up being the oldest kid, which in theory should mean something. But in my house, it meant I was like the rough draft before the perfect final product that was Natalie. She's 18 now, 4 years younger than me, and since she was born, she's been the princess of the family, like literally can do no wrong in my parents' eyes. When I was like 10 and she was 6, I remember she broke my Nintendo DS. On purpose, because I wouldn't lend her my Pokemon game, and my parents told me I should have shared, and that it was my fault for leaving my stuff where she could reach it. That was basically the dynamic my entire childhood. She did whatever she wanted, and somehow it always ended up being my responsibility to take care of her or give in to her. The thing is, I was always the nerd of the family. I loved computers since I was a kid, and I learned to build PCs watching YouTube videos when I was like 14. My parents never gave it much importance. My dad always said it was a waste of time and that I should be outside playing soccer or doing normal things. But I was fascinated by it, and I was good at it. I started doing graphic design when I was 17. First for fun, and then I got some freelance jobs here and there. Nothing huge at first, but I liked it and I was making some money. My parents never saw it as a real job. My mom always asked me when I was going to get a real job. Like what I did, didn't count for anything. Meanwhile, Natalie always had everything served on a silver platter. When she turned 16, my parents bought her a car, a used 2019 Toyota Corolla, but in good condition, because according to them, she needed transportation for school. I never had a car at that age. I had to save until I was 19 to buy myself a second-hand motorcycle that broke down every 2 weeks. Natalie always had new clothes, always went to concerts and events. My parents paid for everything without thinking twice. I, on the other hand, if I wanted something, I had to work for it. And when I got it with my own money, my parents still acted like it wasn't a big deal because it wasn't a traditional office job. Like 2.5 years ago, when I was 19, almost 20, I decided I wanted to build myself a serious gaming PC because my laptop wasn't cutting it anymore, and I also needed something more powerful for my design work. I researched for months, watched reviews, compared prices, basically became an expert on every component I was going to buy. I saved every penny I earned for almost a full year, turned down hangouts with friends, didn't buy new clothes. Literally all my money went toward that PC. My parents made fun of me, said it was ridiculous to spend so much on a computer when I could buy a normal laptop for much less. But I knew what I wanted, and I worked to get it. When I finally saved up the $3,600 and bought all the components, I spent an entire weekend building it. It was like my baby. Seriously. I installed every piece myself, managed the cables perfectly, configured it exactly how I wanted. It had an RTX 3080, an Intel i9 processor, 32 gigabytes of RAM, the whole thing. It was beautiful and worked amazingly. Could run any game on ultra settings, and my design renders that used to take hours now took minutes. My parents never understood why I was so excited. My mom just said it looked the same as any other computer, and my dad commented that I'd spent too much money on something so silly. Natalie didn't even pay attention to it because it wasn't clothes or makeup, so she didn't care. With that PC, I started streaming occasionally. Nothing serious at first. I just played with my best friend Liam, and sometimes we'd broadcast for fun. Liam has been my friend since high school. He's the only one who really understands my passion for this and has always supported me when my family made me feel like I was weird for liking what I like. Little by little, I started getting more followers. Some would donate small amounts. And my design work was also improving because I had better equipment. I wasn't making millions, but I was building something, something that was mine and that I was proud of. Fast forward to 3 months ago. I'd been super busy with several design projects. Some corporate clients had hired me to do complete branding, and I was working like 12 hours a day to meet deadlines. I left the house one Friday morning to go to a coffee shop, where I sometimes worked because the internet was better. I took my laptop because I only needed to make some final corrections. I got back home around 8 at night, exhausted and wanting to relax, playing something before sleeping. And when I walked into my room, my PC wasn't there. It wasn't there. The desk was empty. Only the cables were hanging, and some papers I'd had next to it. I stood there like an idiot for several seconds, trying to process what I was seeing, thinking maybe my brain was being hacked or something because it didn't make sense. I ran downstairs and found my parents watching TV in the living room like nothing. I asked them where my PC was, and my mom looked at me like I'd asked her something super casual, like where are the car keys? And she said, "Oh yeah, we sold it this afternoon. We sold it." Just like that. Like she was talking about the weather. I asked her what the hell she was saying, and my dad jumped in, saying Natalie needed money for clothes for an important university event. That she was going to some gala party or something, and that since I had that computer that was worth so much, they decided to sell it to help my sister. I asked them if they were joking, if they'd really just told me they sold my computer that I paid for with my money without even asking me, and my mom had the nerve to tell me not to be dramatic, that it was just a computer and I could get another one eventually, that Natalie needed to look good for this event because she might meet important people. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach, literally couldn't breathe right. I told them that PC had cost me $3,600 that I saved for a year, that I used it for my work, that they had no right to sell it, and my dad told me that as long as I lived in his house, everything inside those walls belonged to the family, that I should be happy to help my sister. I asked them how much they got for the PC, and my mom said $1,800. They sold it for half what it was worth because the guy who bought it offered them that price in cash immediately, and they needed the money quickly. I went to find Natalie. She was in her room trying on new dresses, like there were about 15 bags from expensive stores scattered everywhere. I asked her if she knew what my parents had done, and she looked at me and said, "Yeah, I needed the money for this." And she pointed at all the clothes. I told her that was my computer, that they had no right to sell it, and she literally shrugged and told me I could get another one, that she needed to look perfect for this gala because she was going with her new boyfriend and wanted to impress her friends. I asked her if she even cared that I'd worked for a year to buy that PC, and she told me, "Not my problem, Owen. Plus, you work from home in pajamas making little drawings. It's not like you have real expenses." I went back to my room and called Liam, told him everything, and he was as furious as I was. He told me that was theft. That legally, my parents, I couldn't sell my property even if I lived in their house, that I should call the police. I spent the whole night looking up information, found the receipts for all the parts I bought, had the confirmation emails, had photos from when I built the PC, basically had all the evidence that it was mine. I also searched Facebook buy and sell groups for PCs in my city until I found the listing. My parents had posted that they were selling a high-end gaming PC for $1,800. The guy who bought it was named something like Jorge or Juan. I don't remember well, but I got his number. I called him the next day and explained the situation, told him my parents had sold my PC without my permission and that I needed to get it back. The guy was nice at first, but told me he'd paid for the computer in good faith, that it wasn't his problem that my parents were idiots, but that if I gave him back the $1,800 plus $300 extra for the trouble, he'd return it to me. I told him I didn't have that money right then, but to give me a few days to get it, and he agreed but warned me that if I took too long he'd keep it because he'd already paid for it. That night, I waited until my parents were having dinner, went down with all my receipts and evidence printed out, and put everything on the table in front of them. I told them they had two options. They gave me back the $1,800 they got for my PC plus another $300 to get it back from the buyer, or I was going to proceed legally, because what they did was theft. My dad laughed and told me not to be ridiculous, that I wasn't going to sue my own family, and I told him to try me and see. I showed him I had all the evidence that the PC was mine, that I'd consulted with a lawyer online. A lie, but they didn't know, and that I had a solid case. My mom started getting nervous, told my dad maybe they should give me some of the money, but my dad kept refusing, saying I was being selfish. that Natalie was my sister and I should want to help her. I told him Natalie was a spoiled brat who'd never worked a day in her life, that my parents gave her everything while I had to break my back for every single thing I wanted, and that I was sick of being treated like a second-class citizen in my own family. Natalie came down in the middle of the argument, wearing one of her new dresses, and asked what was happening, and when I explained, she had the nerve to say I was overreacting over a computer. So, after like 2 hours of arguing where I basically threatened to leave the house and never speak to them again, my parents agreed to give me $1,200. It wasn't everything I needed, but it was something. My dad told me that was all they were going to give me, that they were giving it to me just so I'd stop bothering them, and that from now on I was on my own, not to expect them to help me with anything ever again. I told him perfect, that they'd never really helped me anyway, so I wasn't going to miss anything. I called the guy who had my PC, explained I only had $1,200 and needed a few more days to get the rest. He was surprisingly understanding after I told him the whole story. Told me his own parents had been unfair to him when he was young, so he understood my situation. And we agreed he'd give me the PC back for $1,800 total, but would give me 2 weeks to get the $600 I was missing. I worked like crazy those 2 weeks. Accepted all the design projects offered to me, no matter how small. Made logos for $50, edited photos for $30, whatever. Liam lent me $200 that I paid back later, and I finally got the full amount. I got my PC back, and honestly, when I had it in my room again, I felt like I'd rescued a family member. I checked that everything was in order, that they hadn't done anything to it, and fortunately, the guy had taken good care of it. But something changed in me after all that. You know, I realized that if I kept living with my parents, this was going to happen again in one form or another, because to them, I was never going to be as important as Natalie, and my things were never going to be respected. I started looking for apartments, cheap places I could afford with my freelance work. I found a small studio like 40 minutes from my parents' house. It wasn't much, but rent was $650 a month, and I was making enough to cover it if I was careful with my expenses. Over the following weeks, I increased my workload. Started streaming more often because some of my followers were donating regularly and basically prepared to move out without telling my family anything. The thing is, I didn't confront my parents again after the PC thing. I just started acting normal, went to my room, worked, went out little, and they probably thought I'd gotten over being angry. But inside I was planning my escape. You know, like those movies where the protagonist is in prison and plans their breakout in secret. Every time I left the house, I'd take some of my stuff in my backpack, clothes, cables, small things my parents wouldn't notice were missing immediately. Like a month after getting my PC back, my mom told me at breakfast she needed to talk to me. I sat down expecting another horrible thing, and she told me that it turned out selling my PC had been Natalie's idea from the beginning. Apparently, my sister had told my mom that I spent too much time on the computer anyway, and it wouldn't hurt me to be without it for a while. And that besides, I could get another one because I had my job, so why not use that money to help her since she really needed it? My mom told me this like it was completely normal. Like she expected me to understand the twisted logic. I asked her why she was telling me this now, and she said, because Natalie felt a little bad that I was still angry and wanted me to know it hadn't been malicious, but that she thought it was a good solution for everyone. A good solution. Selling my $3,600 computer without permission so she could buy dresses. I told my mom to thank her for that information because I just confirmed that moving out was the best decision I could make, and she asked me what I was talking about. I told her she'd see. 2 weeks later, on a Saturday morning when my parents went out with Natalie to some family event I obviously wasn't invited to, I rented a small truck with Liam's help, and we took all my stuff out of the house. I didn't have that many things, really. My PC, obviously. My clothes. Some books. My old consoles. Personal stuff. But everything I took out of that house, I felt like I was lifting a weight off myself. I left a note in my room that basically said, I moved out. Don't try to contact me for a while. I need space from a family that clearly doesn't value me. And I gave them my new address, but made it clear I didn't want visits. When my parents came back and saw the note, my mom started calling me like crazy. I was in my new apartment organizing my stuff and watched the calls come in one after another. I finally answered, and she was hysterical, telling me, how could I do this to them? That I was their son, that I couldn't just leave like that. I told her I could, and I was doing it. That I'd spent 22 years being treated like less than nothing while they indulged Natalie's every whim, and that it was enough. My dad took the phone and started yelling at me, saying I was ungrateful, that they'd given me a roof and food for 22 years and this was how I repaid them. I told him roof and food was the minimum parents should provide, and that if that was all they were going to offer while destroying my self-esteem and selling my belongings, I preferred to be alone. Over the following weeks, I got message after message from my mom. My dad, even Natalie sent me a text saying I was being dramatic and should come home and stop acting like a child. Every message made me angrier because none of them included a real apology. They were all just guilt-tripping, attempts to make me feel bad for standing up for myself. My mom told me I was her eldest son and had responsibilities to the family. My dad reminded me that without them, I'd be nothing. And Natalie told me I was ruining the family atmosphere over a tantrum. I sent one last long message to my parents where I explained everything. Every occasion when they'd made me feel less important than Natalie. Every time they'd dismissed my work and my achievements. Every moment when I'd needed their support and hadn't received it. I told them that selling my PC had been just the last straw, but that the real problem was they'd never treated me with the same love and respect as my sister. And that until they acknowledged that and apologized genuinely, I wasn't going to maintain contact. My mom responded saying I was making things up, that they'd always treated us equally, and that if I felt less, it was because I put myself in that place by choosing a job that wasn't respectable. That's when I blocked their numbers. Liam told me I'd done the right thing, that it was time to set boundaries and take care of my mental health. The first few months were tough, I'm not gonna lie. Financially, I was tight, but not bad. And emotionally, sometimes I felt guilty for leaving like that. But every time I thought about going back or contacting them, I remembered Natalie's indifferent face when I confronted her about the PC, remembered my dad telling me my work wasn't real, remembered years of being invisible, and the guilt would pass. Like 2 months after moving out, a family friend contacted me to ask if I knew my parents were having financial problems. Apparently, after spending so much money on Natalie for years, including that event they sold my PC for, they'd gotten pretty deep in debt. Natalie had asked them to pay for who knows how many more things after the clothes. A trip with friends, more clothes, beauty treatments, and my parents didn't know how to say no to her. Now they were struggling to pay their own bills, and the friend told me my mom had commented that she wished I was there to help them because I'd always been responsible with money. I'm not gonna lie. Part of me felt satisfaction knowing the consequences of spoiling Natalie so much were finally catching up with them. But another part of me just felt sad because, even in financial trouble, my mom wasn't thinking about acknowledging how badly they'd treated me. She was only thinking about how I could be useful to them. I didn't do anything with that information, just thanked the friend for telling me and continued with my life. Like 3 months into living alone, my mom sent me an email. I don't know how she got my new email, but she did. Telling me Natalie's birthday was in 2 weeks and she was having a family dinner. She was inviting me to go. Said it would be good to see each other, that family shouldn't be fighting, and that Natalie really wanted me there because she missed me. She didn't mention anything about the PC. There was no apology, nothing, just the invitation like everything was normal. I responded that I wasn't going. That until there was a real acknowledgement of what had happened and a sincere apology, I wasn't going to subject myself to another family gathering where they made me feel bad. My mom called me after reading my response, this time more aggressive, telling me I was being selfish. How could I miss my sister's birthday over a silly grudge, that I was destroying the family? I told her I hadn't destroyed anything, that they had destroyed my trust and respect for them when they chose over and over to put Natalie's whims above my basic needs to be treated like a valuable human being. She told me I'd always been too sensitive, that I misinterpreted everything, and that if I'd been less complicated, things would have been easier for everyone. That conversation was the last time I spoke to her. I told her that evidently she was never going to understand what made me feel bad for years, and that for my mental health it was better we didn't talk anymore. She started crying, saying I was killing her with my attitude, and I told her she'd killed our relationship long before, when she decided one child was worth more than the other. I blocked her email too after that. Blocked my entire immediate family on all platforms. And the truth is, since then, my life has improved incredibly. My streaming channel grew. Now I have like 5,000 followers, and although it's not millionaire money, the donations and subs help a lot. My design work also increased. I have regular clients who pay well and respect me as a professional. I have peace of mind. I don't have to hear comparisons with Natalie anymore. I don't have to feel like everything I do isn't enough. Liam is still my best friend. He streams with me regularly and always reminds me I made the right decision. I met a girl like a month ago at a gaming event. We get along well and we're seeing what happens, but I'm not in a hurry. For the first time in my life, I feel like I'm building something that's genuinely mine, without the shadow of a family that never valued me. I'm not going to say I'm completely happy or that everything is perfect. Sometimes it still hurts to think about what could have been if my parents had been different, if they'd seen my value like they saw Natalie's. But I'm not angry anymore. You know, I went through the rage stage, then the sadness stage, and now I'm just at peace with my decision. They chose the kind of relationship they wanted to have with me every time they pushed me aside for my sister, and I chose to respect myself enough not to accept that treatment anymore. Last week I was playing on stream, had just won a difficult match, and people in chat were celebrating, and in that moment I realized this small community of people I don't even know in person have given me more support and validation in these months than my family did in 22 years. And that made me feel sad for them, honestly, because they chose to lose me for not being able to see beyond their own prejudices and favoritism. I don't know what'll happen in the future. Maybe someday my parents will understand what they did and apologize genuinely. Maybe not. But what I do know is I'm not going to wait for their approval or their love to feel valuable anymore. I built a life with my own hands, literally and figuratively, and nobody's going to take it from me again.